Here is the through line of the last 7 episodes, stated plainly. Massachusetts flogged Quakers and banished them. New Amsterdam's Peter Stuyvesant tried to expel them. Maryland's Tolerance Charter didn't cover them adequately. Rhode Island's Roger Williams offered them shelter, but not a home. And then William Penn, a Quaker who had been imprisoned 3 times in the Tower of London for his faith, went to King Charles II with a royal debt the crown owed his dead father and said, "Pay me in land." He got 45,000 square miles of it, and on that land he built the most deliberately, comprehensively tolerant colony in American history. Not for Quakers, for everyone. The Holy Experiment, Pennsylvania, 1681. Here's the scope of Pennsylvania's founding significance beyond its own story. Penn's frame of government of 1682 was the most sophisticated constitutional document produced in colonial America up to that point, and Thomas Jefferson read it. Philadelphia became the largest city in colonial North America by 1750, and the site of both the First and Second Continental Congresses, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitutional Convention. Benjamin Franklin, the most intellectually consequential American of the 18th century, made Philadelphia his home and his laboratory. And in 1780, Pennsylvania passed the Gradual Abolition Act, the first law in American history to begin the legal abolition of slavery. The colony founded by a man imprisoned for his faith became the colony that first put abolition into law. The Holy Experiment produced more consequential outcomes per square mile than any other colony in this series. Today we cover the full founding story of Pennsylvania, from William Penn's Quaker faith and his imprisonments to the Royal Charter of 1681, to Penn's frame of government and its constitutional innovations, to the founding of Philadelphia as the most deliberately planned city in colonial America, to Penn's treaty with the Lenape at Shackamaxon, the most respectful founding negotiation in the series, to Benjamin Franklin's extraordinary life in Philadelphia, to Pennsylvania's role at the center of the Revolution and the Constitutional Convention, and finally, to the Pennsylvania Gradual Abolition Act of 1780, and what it meant that the Holy Experiment was the first colony to put abolition into law. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why Philadelphia was the intellectual and political capital of the American founding, and why it was a Quaker who built the city that made it possible. Back to the beginning. William Penn was born in 1644 into a family with genuine connections to power. His father, Admiral Sir William Penn, was a hero of the Anglo-Dutch Wars and a close associate of King Charles II. The younger Penn converted to Quakerism at 22 in 1666, which was, in the England of the Restoration, an act of extraordinary personal courage. Quakers refused to swear oaths, refused to doff their hats to social superiors, refused to pay tithes to the Church of England, and held religious meetings outside Anglican authority. These were criminal acts. Penn was imprisoned in the Tower of London in 1668, again in 1671, and again in 1672. His father, mortified but loyal, used every connection he had to get his son released each time. When Admiral Penn died in 1670, he left his son a significant claim against the crown, £16,000 in debt that Charles II owed him. William Penn waited 11 years, then presented the bill. In 1680, Penn petitioned King Charles II for a land grant in America in settlement of the crown's £16,000 debt to his father's estate. Charles II was happy to comply. It settled a debt, removed a troublesome Quaker from England, and opened another colonial territory. In March 1681, Penn received the charter for Pennsylvania, Penn's Woods, named by Charles II for Admiral Penn, the father, rather than the son. Penn was now the proprietor of the largest private land grant in English history, 45,000 square miles of the North American interior. He immediately began designing it with a specificity that no previous colonial proprietor had attempted. Not just writing a charter, but designing a city, drafting a constitutional document, and writing letters to the Lenape people who already lived there. Penn understood that he was not founding an empty territory. He was proposing a new arrangement to its existing inhabitants. Before a single colonist had sailed for Pennsylvania, Penn wrote its constitutional framework, the Frame of Government of 1682. It was the most sophisticated constitutional document produced in colonial America to that point. It established a representative assembly, guaranteed trial by jury, provided for freedom of worship for all who believed in God, regardless of denomination, and included a provision for amending the Constitution itself, which was constitutionally innovative anywhere in the world at that time. Penn wrote in its preface, "Any government is free to the people under it, whatever be the frame, where the laws rule and the people are a party to those laws." He was paraphrasing an argument that would appear, slightly revised, in the Declaration of Independence 94 years later. Penn was not just a religious refugee building a safe harbor. He was a constitutional theorist building a proof of concept for human self-governance. Philadelphia, Penn's city of brotherly love, from the Greek, was the most deliberately planned urban settlement in colonial American history. Penn designed it himself, a precise grid of streets running east-west and north-south between the Delaware and Schuylkill rivers, with 5 public squares distributed symmetrically across the grid, one at the center and one in each quadrant. Wide streets, regular lots, space for gardens. Penn called it a green country town, a city that would not have the crowding and disease of London. He named the central square Center Square. It is now the site of Philadelphia City Hall. The 4 quadrant squares are now Logan, Rittenhouse, Washington, and Franklin squares. The grid Penn designed in 1682 is still the street layout of central Philadelphia today. It was the most comprehensive act of urban planning in the colonial world, and it worked. Penn's relationship with the Lenape people who inhabited Pennsylvania before his arrival is the most distinctive aspect of his founding story, and the most anomalous in the entire colonial record. Before arriving in Pennsylvania, Penn wrote letters to the Lenape explaining his intentions and acknowledging their prior possession of the land. When he arrived in 1682, he met with Lenape leaders at Shackamaxon under the great elm tree that became the symbol of the treaty, and negotiated a formal agreement. The Quakers would purchase land rather than seize it, trade fairly, and coexist peacefully. No legal document of this treaty has survived, but its existence and character are well attested. What makes the Penn-Lenape relationship historically exceptional is not just that Penn negotiated, it is that the peace held for more than 70 years. Until Penn's sons, who were not Quakers and did not share his principles, perpetrated the walking purchase fraud of 1737 and destroyed everything their father had built with the Lenape in one dishonest transaction. Penn called Pennsylvania his holy experiment, and by the standards of 1682, it was genuinely experimental. Freedom of worship for all who believed in God, no religious test for political office, trial by jury guaranteed, no capital punishment except for murder and treason, at a time when England had over 200 capital offenses, a free press, the right to change the colony's laws through a representative assembly. Penn advertised the colony across Europe in English, German, Dutch, and French, and the response was immediate. German Mennonites and Pietists from the Rhine Valley arrived in 1683, founding Germantown, the first organized German settlement in America. Welsh Quakers came, English Quakers came, Anglicans, Catholics, Lutherans, and Jews came because the charter protected all of them. By 1700, Pennsylvania was the fastest-growing colony in North America. The holy experiment worked. The colony Penn built attracted people who shared his ethical seriousness, and some of them went further than Penn himself. In 1688, German Mennonite and Quaker settlers in Germantown, Pennsylvania, signed the Germantown Petition Against Slavery, the first organized anti-slavery document in American history. It argued, simply, that if you believe all people have an equal right to liberty, you cannot hold people as property. The four signers, Franz Daniel Pastorius, Gerrit Henderich, Derek Up de Graaf, and Abraham Up de Graaf, sent the petition to the Philadelphia Quaker meeting. The meeting tabled it. It was too controversial. But the argument had been made, in writing, and it would not go away. 92 years later, in 1780, Pennsylvania passed the first abolition law in American history. The Germantown petitioners were right. It just took almost a century for the institution Penn founded to agree. Before we get into Benjamin Franklin, the Constitutional Convention, and the 1780 Abolition Act, comment below. 8 episodes in now, we've covered Virginia, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maryland, New York, and Pennsylvania. I want to know something specific. Which founding figure from any of these 8 episodes do you think had the most complete and correct political philosophy? Not the most charismatic, not the most dramatic, the most actually right. Roger Williams, William Penn, Cecil Calvert, Hamilton? Tell me below. I'm keeping track. Benjamin Franklin arrived in Philadelphia in 1723 as a 17-year-old runaway from Boston. He had been apprenticed to his brother's printing shop, disagreed with his brother, and left for the city Penn had built. He chose well. Franklin spent the next 6 decades making Philadelphia the intellectual capital of colonial North America. He founded the Pennsylvania Gazette. He published Poor Richard's Almanac. He established the first public library in America, the first fire company in Philadelphia, the first university in Pennsylvania, now the University of Pennsylvania, and the American Philosophical Society. He proved lightning was electrical with his kite experiment in 1752 and invented the lightning rod, bifocals, and the Franklin stove. He then became a diplomat, a statesman, and one of the 5 principal authors of the Declaration of Independence. Franklin is the most comprehensively accomplished individual in the series, and he came to Philadelphia because Penn had built a city where what you could do mattered more than where you came from. Penn's holy experiment had a fatal structural weakness. It depended on Penn himself. When Penn died in 1718, after years of debt, illness, and legal battles, his sons Thomas and John inherited the proprietorship. They were Anglicans, not Quakers, and they did not share their father's principles regarding the Lenape. In 1737, Thomas Penn perpetrated the walking purchase, one of the most dishonest land transactions in colonial history. Penn's agents produced a questionable 1686 document claiming the Lenape had agreed to sell land extending as far as a man could walk in a day and a half. Thomas Penn then hired the 3 fastest runners in the colony, cleared a path through the forest in advance, and the walkers covered approximately 65 miles in the allotted time, roughly 3 times what a walking pace would have covered. The Lenape were dispossessed of 1.2 million acres. The 70-year peace Penn had built was destroyed in a day and a half of running. Pennsylvania's list of firsts. And I need you to understand that this is one colony. First public library in America, Philadelphia, 1731, Benjamin Franklin. First fire insurance company in America, Philadelphia, 1752, Benjamin Franklin. First hospital in America, Pennsylvania Hospital, Philadelphia, 1751, Benjamin Franklin. First medical school in America, University of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, 1765. First daily newspaper in America, Pennsylvania Packet, Philadelphia, 1784. First anti-slavery document in American history, Germantown Petition, 1688. First abolition law in American history, Pennsylvania Gradual Abolition Act, 1780. Site of the Declaration of Independence, Philadelphia, 1776. Site of the Constitutional Convention, Philadelphia, 1787. First capital of the United States, Philadelphia, 1790 to 1800. This is one colony. Penn built one colony and it produced all of this. The holy experiment worked better than even Penn had reason to hope. Philadelphia was the natural site of both Continental Congresses and the Declaration of Independence, not just because it was the largest city in colonial North America, but because Penn's founding principle of civic inclusion meant that delegates from every colony could meet there without navigating the religious exclusions that characterized other colonial capitals. The Second Continental Congress convened in Philadelphia's Pennsylvania State House, now Independence Hall, in May 1775. Thomas Jefferson drafted the Declaration of Independence there in June 1776, drawing on arguments he had read in multiple sources, including Penn's Frame of Government. The Declaration was adopted on July 4, 1776. Franklin, at 70, was the oldest delegate. He had been a Pennsylvania assemblyman, colonial agent in London, and was already the most internationally famous American alive. He signed the Declaration in the city he had helped build, in the colony founded by a man imprisoned for his faith. 11 years after the Declaration, Philadelphia hosted the Constitutional Convention of 1787, again in Independence Hall. Franklin was there, now 81, carried to the sessions in a sedan chair because he was too frail to walk. He gave what is considered the greatest speech in the convention's proceedings, a short address on the final day urging every delegate to sign the Constitution, regardless of their reservations, on the grounds that no document produced by human beings would ever be perfect, and that the agreement to proceed together under an imperfect document was itself the most important political act. James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and George Washington all attended. The Constitution they produced was ratified by Pennsylvania on December 12, 1787, the second state to ratify, 3 days after Delaware. The city Penn had designed on a grid, in a colony he had founded on the principle of civic equality, had hosted both the document declaring America's independence and the document structuring its government. On March 1, 1780, 4 years into the Revolutionary War, Pennsylvania passed an Act for the Gradual Abolition of Slavery, the first abolition law in American history. It did not free enslaved people immediately. It was gradual, and it had significant limitations. Children born to enslaved mothers after March 1, 1780, would be free at age 28. People already enslaved remained enslaved for life, but the Act's preamble stated clearly that a state that had just declared all men to be created equal could not justify holding people in slavery, and it set in legal motion the abolition process that would take the rest of the century to complete in Pennsylvania. The Germantown petitioners of 1688 had made the argument. The Philadelphia Quaker meeting had tabled it as too controversial. The Pennsylvania legislature passed it as law 92 years later. Penn's holy experiment had taken 92 years to reach its own logical conclusion. Here is the sharpest contradiction in the Pennsylvania story, and I want to hold it without resolving it, because it doesn't resolve. Penn's personal legacy, 70 years of genuine peace with the Lenape, the most respectful colonial indigenous relationship in the series. His son's legacy, the walking purchase fraud of 1737, which dispossessed the Lenape of 1.2 million acres through outright deception and destroyed everything Penn had built with them. Penn's institutional legacy, the frame of government, the holy experiment, the city that hosted both the Declaration and the Constitutional Convention, the first abolition law. His personal failure. Penn died deeply in debt, had mortgaged his own colony to creditors, spent years in a debtor's prison in England, and left Pennsylvania so financially encumbered that his heirs sold it to expediency. The man was right about almost everything that mattered, and catastrophically wrong about managing his own finances. Pennsylvania survived him by being better than he was. Pennsylvania's contribution to the Bill of Rights is direct and underappreciated. Penn's frame of government of 1682 established freedom of worship, trial by jury, and due process protections almost a century before Madison drafted the first 10 amendments. Madison read Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania Constitution of 1776, written as the Revolution began, was the most radically democratic state constitution in the new nation. It abolished property qualifications for voting, required legislative proceedings to be public, and included a Declaration of Rights that preceded and influenced Madison's Federal Bill of Rights. The specific language of the Fourth Amendment, protecting against unreasonable searches and seizures, derives directly from a legal principle Penn himself established in the Bushels case of 1670, when a London jury refused to convict Penn of unlawful assembly despite judicial pressure, and established the principle of jury independence that became a cornerstone of Anglo-American law. Penn's legal legacy is in the Bill of Rights. Literally, Pennsylvania's landscape is among the most varied and beautiful in the colonial territory. The Delaware Valley's gentle farmland in the east, the Susquehanna River Valley cutting through the center, the Appalachian Ridges rising in the west, and the extraordinary Pennsylvania Dutch farmland of Lancaster County, the most productive agricultural land in 18th century colonial America. The Germans and Swiss, who came because Penn's charter protected them, turned the limestone-rich Lancaster County soil into the breadbasket of the Revolution. Washington's Continental Army ate Pennsylvania grain during the winter at Valley Forge, which is also in Pennsylvania. The landscape that Penn advertised in German, Dutch, French, and English delivered on every promise. The Holy Experiment was also an agricultural experiment. It produced the most food of any colony in the Revolution. Here is the through line of the series, arriving at its clearest statement. Rhode Island's Roger Williams believed in tolerance as a theological conviction. God required it. Maryland's Cecil Calvert believed in tolerance as a political strategy. Survival required it. New Amsterdam's Dutch merchants practiced tolerance as commercial indifference. Profit required it. William Penn believed in tolerance as a moral absolute. Conscience required it. And what Penn added that none of the others had fully articulated was this: tolerance is not enough. You also need a constitutional structure that makes intolerance illegal, regardless of who is in power. The frame of government was Penn's answer to his own sons, the recognition that a holy experiment cannot depend on holy men. It needs holy laws. Penn was right. His sons proved it. Pennsylvania survived them because the structure held even when the men didn't. William Penn died in 1718, having never fully seen the colony he had imagined become what he knew it could be. He died in debt, having mortgaged Pennsylvania to pay for the legal battles that consumed the last decade of his life. His body was buried in the Quaker graveyard at Jordan's in Buckinghamshire, England. He never returned to Pennsylvania after 1701, but Philadelphia became the largest city in colonial North America. The frame of government influenced Jefferson. The Germantown petitioner's argument became law in 1780. The city Penn designed hosted both the Declaration and the Constitution. And in 1984, President Ronald Reagan posthumously made William Penn, born in London, imprisoned 3 times for his faith, who came to America to build something better, an honorary citizen of the United States. There have been only 6 honorary citizens in American history. Penn is one of them. He built the country's most consequential city, wrote the constitutional arguments that shaped its founding documents, and never once stopped being a Quaker in plain gray. The holy experiment worked. Penn just didn't live to see it. That's Pennsylvania, episode 8 of 13. We are now past the halfway point of this series, and entering what I think of as the second half's specific challenge, the colonies that don't have one clean founding story. Next up is New Jersey, which was divided between East Jersey and West Jersey for decades, governed by Quakers and Puritans and Dutch settlers and English proprietors simultaneously, and somehow produced the most important pre-revolutionary constitutional document outside of Pennsylvania, the New Jersey Plan, which nearly derailed the Constitutional Convention entirely. It's the colony that everyone forgets, and nobody should. That's episode 9. Subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll see you there.